Senator from Kentucky.
I rise today in support of Senator Feinstein's amendment. I compliment her on her work, and I also echo the importance of the right to trial by jury. In fact, I'm appalled that anyone would think that we could arrest anyone in our country without charging them and giving them a right to a trial. It seems so fundamentally un-American. I agree with her also that I think the Supreme Court would apply this to anyone. Our amendment will say citizens and permanent residents, but I think the Supreme Court, if challenged, will uphold the right to trial by jury of anyone within the United States. Today we will either affirm the right to trial by jury or restrict it. Today we will vote to affirm the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution, or we will spurn it. Today we will vote to affirm 800 years of history, beginning with the Magna Carta, or we will relinquish, or at the very least diminish, a right that Jefferson referred to as the only anchor yet imagined by man, which a government can be held to the principles of its Constitution. The right to trial by jury was a check on oppressive government. Opponents of the right to trial by jury will come today, and they will argue that the American homeland is now a battlefield, and that we must circumscribe our right to trial by jury to be safe from terrorists. But if we give up our rights, have not the terrorists won? If we let fear relinquish our rights, if we relinquish our rights because of fear, what is it exactly then we're fighting for? We are asked to relinquish our rights because the battlefield is limitless. It's, though not a temporary suspension they're asking for, and they request this because they also say that the battle is also without limit. This is not a war that's going to end, nor is it a right that they will suspend temporarily. They're asking you to relinquish your right to trial by jury for the rest of this limitless war. Those senators who would propose limiting the right to trial by jury, they deflect and demur that everyone will still have a habeas hearing. Well, a habeas hearing is important. You must present the body, and a judge must say, why are you holding this person? But it's not the end of due process. It's the beginning of due process. A habeas hearing isn't due process. It's the beginning. We must still have a trial by jury, or we do not have the due process that our founding fathers fought for. Those senators who would abridge this and say a habeas hearing is enough should remember Blackstone's admonition. Every new tribunal erected for the decision of facts without the intervention of a jury is a step towards establishing aristocracy, the most oppressive of absolute governments. We are told that we can't do this. We have to put these people outside of the constitutional courts, that somehow we need something beyond the Constitution, that the Constitution's not enough to convict terrorists. And yet hundreds of terrorists have been convicted. In fact, 2 terrorists in my little small town, Bowling Green, Kentucky, were apprehended and were tried and were convicted for life for terrorism. We can do it. We are told that only terrorists associated with Al-Qaeda will be applied to. We will only take away the right to trial by jury if they're part of Al-Qaeda. But part of the security apparatus also tells us to know your neighbor. Know your neighbor so you can report your neighbor. In fact, we are told by the government some of the characteristics that might make you a terrorist. We are told by the Department of Justice that if you have stains on your clothing, that if you're missing fingers, if you have changed the color of your hair recently, that if you prefer to pay in cash, that if you own weatherized ammunition, that if you own multiple guns, you might be a terrorist, that your neighbor should report you. Do we really want to relinquish our right to trial by jury if the characteristics of terrorism are wanting to pay by cash? In Missouri, they had fusion centers. They're supposed to accumulate information about terrorists and sort of assimilate federal and local and have better communications. Sounds good. I'm all for better communications. Before 9/11, we did mess up. We didn't communicate well. But from this fusion center comes a document that says, beware of people who have bumper stickers supporting third-party candidates. Beware of people who believe in stricter immigration laws. Beware of people who support the right to life. They might be terrorists. This is an official document. Do we want to give up the right to trial by jury when we're being told that somebody who keeps food in their basement might be a terrorist? Am I the only one who fears The relinquishing of a right that we've had for 800 years? Am I the only one who fears that a terrorist might be someone who you might describe as someone who's a constitutionalist? This is an ancient right, the trial by jury we've had virtually since the beginning of our historic time. The Greeks and the Romans had a form of right to trial by jury. In 725 AD, Morgan of Glamorgan, the Prince of Wales, said, "For as Christ and his 12 apostles were finally to judge the world, so human tribunals would be composed of 12 wise men." We've been doing this for hundreds upon hundreds of years, and we saw it as a way to check the oppression of the king, but also to check the potential oppression of government. England and America have for centuries prized this right to trial by jury. It seems a shame to scrap it now. Our founders believed so firmly in the right to trial by jury that they enshrined it in the body of the Constitution, again in the Sixth Amendment, and again every state of the Union has within the body of its Constitution the right to trial by jury. It seems a shame to scrap it now. Churchill proudly remembers our joint devotion to trial by jury. He writes, "We must never cease to proclaim in fearless tones the great principles of freedom and the rights of man, which are the joint inheritance of the English-speaking people, and which through the Magna Carta in 1215, through the Bill of Rights, through habeas corpus, through the right to trial by jury, and the English common law find their most famous expression in the Declaration of Independence." Senator La Follette, a famous senator from Wisconsin, put it well. He said, "Let no man think that we can deny civil liberty to others and retain it for ourselves. When zealots of the government, agents of the government, arrest suspects or radicals without warrants, hold them without trial, deny them access to counsel or admission of bail, we have shorn the Bill of Rights of its sanctity. Today we have a chance to reaffirm our belief in the right to trial by jury. We have a chance to replace fear with confidence. Confidence that no terrorist and no country will ever conquer us if we remain steadfast to the principles of our founding documents. We have nothing to fear except our own unwillingness to defend what is naturally ours, our God-given rights. We have nothing to fear that should cause us to relinquish our rights as free men and women. I urge my colleagues to reject fear, to reject the siren call for ever more powerful government. Justice White put it well when he said, "A right to a jury trial is granted criminal defendants in order to prevent the oppression of government." It's not just about a fair trial, it's about checking your government. This vote today is about more than just combating terrorism or a fair trial. It's about relinquishing the right to the checks and balances, to the checks that cause and help us to check the relentless growth of government. It is about whether a free people are willing to remain steadfast in our defense of an 800-year-old right that finds justice for the accused and provides restraint and limits on despotism. I hope my colleagues will today vote against limitations on the trial by jury, recognize its sanctity, and recognize the importance of something that brings members from the right side of the aisle together with members of the left side of the aisle who believe strongly in the defense of the Bill of Rights. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back my time.